Really? Heath nodded his head firmly. He was a man of his word. Help me find out who the woman who seduced Timothy was. Melissa's eyes lit up. Help me find her. I want her to die. Any woman who tried to snatch a man from her should die. Melissa gritted her teeth so hard that they squealed. Her eyes instantly turned red. She was so enraged that her fingers gripping Heath's hand hurt him. Mel, don't be like this. Heath looked at her in disbelief. He never thought that Melissa, who was warm and beautiful as a dream, could turn into the ice queen before him. In the past, he had always chalked her issues up to deeply rooted insecurities, but she was taking this to the extreme. Don't be like what? Are you not going to help me? When she heard his voice, she felt annoyed and immediately sneered. Just now, you are still confidently saying that no matter what I ask you to do, you would do it. I will help you investigate the woman, but are you sure you want to kill her? Heath shook his head. In the past, Melissa was notorious for being hostile toward the women around Timothy. But the most spiteful thing she had done was to chase those women out of Harburton. She had never proposed killing them. I'm sure. She did not hesitate in her response at all and continued to say hatefully, she must die. Melissa, you have changed. Heath looked at her thinking she looked like a stranger. Yes, I have changed, Melissa snarled. Her originally gentle and beautiful face became ferocious. Timothy promised to love me for the rest of his life, but he still cheated on me. You promised me that you would protect me for the rest of my life. You even told me repeatedly. Who else can I trust? It was like you forced me to become like this, she said, and immediately shook his hand away. She lifted the blanket and pretended to get off to bed. Heath, since you don't want to help me, I will have to do it myself. Either way, someone is going to die. Mel, what are you doing? Heath hurriedly hugged her. Your health is not good. You cannot get worked up. Please be reasonable. He helplessly pleaded. I am going to die. Why should I care about my health and whether I'm agitated? Melissa sneered and struggled in Heath's arms with all that she had. Let go of me. I will personally see to her. I promise you. He hugged her tightly. Mel, I promise you I will see to it. Calm down, please. Melissa immediately stopped struggling. Really? Really? You're not lying to me? Would I lie to you? Melissa finally let out a sigh of relief when she heard what he said. Sometimes she would cry and sometimes she would make a fuss. Luckily, her efforts were not in vain. Be good. Lie down on the bed and get some rest. He saw that Melissa had stopped struggling and he carried her back to the bed. She did not struggle this time and quietly laid down. Heath sighed. It was not the first time that he helped Melissa deal with the women surrounding Timothy, but this time was like nothing before. She had actually asked him to kill someone. As he thought about this, Heath shifted his gaze to her face. But why was she so obsessed with killing her? When he agreed to pretend to be her cousin, he had made up his mind to protect her for the rest of her life. If Melissa was going to kill someone because he refused her, it would be better for him to just do it by himself. At least after the matter was exposed, he could take all of the blame, and Melissa could continue to be the wife of the CEO of the Godot Group. You really are good to me. Melissa's face was full of smiles, and she no longer looked as angry as before. Of course. I will always be good to you. Heath reached out and touched Melissa's pale, smooth cheeks. He said softly, I said I will protect you for the rest of your life. Melissa looked at Heath's serious eyes and suddenly felt her heart soften a bit. For so many years, he had always been by her side. He had never left her. He was always thinking about her and doing nice things for her. Go check the bathroom door and make sure it's closed. She looked at him and said in a gentle voice. Seeing her with such rare sweetness, Heath was flattered. He quickly got up and checked on the bedroom door, guaranteeing that no one could enter. However, when Heath turned around, he was immediately hugged by Melissa from behind. Mel. Heath felt like he was dreaming. It had been a long time since Melissa took the initiative to hug him so gently. Heath turned around and held her in his arms. His heart was beating rapidly in his chest. He was so happy that he felt dizzy. Heath. Melissa laid on his chest and murmured. She started talking about how she needed to kill the woman who had seduced Timothy, and she also needed to plot her revenge on him. After all, she had loved him so much that she always threatened him like a crown jewel on her head. But he had transgressed, and bad behaviors begets punishment. When Heath heard Melissa say this, he was stunned for a second. Then he started to kiss her lips passionately. Every time he interacted with her in this way, Heath was transported to paradise. After Melissa and Timothy got married, he did most of the initiation. He could only hug and kiss her secretly, but he was not often intimate with her. Heath remembered that the first time he had been with Melissa was after Timothy had been on a business trip for 2 weeks. Melissa took the initiative to look for him after she got drunk. The second time was when Timothy had worked overtime for a week at the Godot Group. Heath had missed Melissa so much that he had been going crazy, so he secretly snuck into her bedroom. The third time was their third wedding anniversary. The two of them had gone on a trip together, and he was accompanied by Gary. Heath was with Melissa while Timothy was busy having a video conference. This was the fourth time he had been intimate with her, and this was the most provocative and gentle she had ever been. Heath was so incredibly happy, Melissa's dreamy expression in his arms spurred on him. Mel, I get to be with you again. Do you know how excited I am? Heath kissed her carefully, as if she was a treasure. Melissa vaguely responded, the expression on her face indicating that she needed more from him. Mrs. Liu had finished cleaning on the first floor and had gone back to her room to rest early. Aside from her presence, there was no one else in the villa. In the CEO's office of the Godot Group, Timothy closed his eyes and sat back in his expensive office chair, looking like he had a headache. It had been an hour since he came into work, but he still hadn't gotten into working mode. He felt sorry for his wife. When they got married, he promised her that he would take good care of her and not hurt her, but he had done something to betray that trust. It would be better to confess to her and plead for forgiveness. He had made up his mind. No matter how angry she was, he would sincerely apologize and work to make up for his mistake until she forgave him. Later that morning, Derek Weston, who had met them last night to discuss business, had called Leslie. He mentioned on the call that his best friend had left with a woman. Timothy was a famously good man. Leslie had no desire to report on him to Melissa. Many thoughts rolled around in Leslie's mind as he thought over all that had occurred. Who was this enchantress who had entrapped the loyal Timothy? Has there been some kind of mistake? Leslie was itching to ask which woman was so charming that she had actually enticed Timothy to reconsider his fidelity. However, at that moment, Melissa called him. This time, Leslie found himself a bit anxious. Had she picked up on something? Was she investigating Timothy's whereabouts? In order to cover for Timothy, Leslie hurriedly gave Derek a few instructions. The main thing was that he could not tell anyone that Timothy had left with a woman, no matter who asked. He had to say that Timothy was with him the entire night. If any information contrary to this were to make its way around, more than just people in their inner circle would be affected. This had the potential to hurt company relations around the globe. After Leslie heard Derek's promise, he hung up the phone and picked up Melissa's call. Based on his years of experience with women, he knew that while this woman appeared weak on the surface, she had it in her to be fierce when the need arose. She was gentle and reasonable, but she might just have some tricks up her sleeve. Otherwise, why would Timothy be so loyal to her for 4 years? When he answered Melissa's questions, Leslie was painstakingly careful. She could not find a single hole in his story. After hanging up the phone, Leslie still had a lingering fear. He was afraid that something bad would happen to Timothy, so he worriedly rushed to the Godot Group headquarters building. Just as Timothy was thinking about how to explain the events of the previous night to Melissa, Leslie walked in without knocking. However, when Leslie saw Timothy's calm expression, he knew that nothing major had happened, so he heaved a sigh of relief. Leslie's unannounced entry was not appreciated by his pal. "What's the matter now? Don't bother me." Timothy had a headache. If Leslie had forced him to meet with Derek Weston and had just left to go on a date with some beautiful woman, would he have run into Anya? What could have happened to her if he hadn't stepped in? Of course there's something going on. It's always about you. Leslie was wearing a light blue casual suit with a white shirt underneath. He did not wear a tie, which made him look more casual and relaxed. Leslie was a little over 6 feet tall and always had a fashionable hairstyle. He wore a cynical smile on his angular face, and his thin lips many women found appealing. What does it have to do with me? Timothy was not interested at all. He did not even look at him. He picked up a document and started to read it. Did Mel interrogate you when you got home? Leslie sat on the guest chair and looked at the other curiously. He was the first to know about Timothy not returning home before dawn. Last night, I heard you were in a fierce duel with a beautiful woman, he added. Don't push it, Leslie. Timothy growled, but didn't even raise his head and signed his name on a document. Leslie shrugged and continued, Tim, you don't know. Last night, when Melissa called me and asked me where you were, I was about to get laid. There was this beautiful woman I had just met, but I had to stop and pick up her call. It completely ruined the mood. Leslie? Timothy's forehead wrinkled. He finally looked up at Leslie and asked, What exactly do you want me to say? I just want to ask if you told Melissa what happened. Leslie's eyes flashed with curiosity. No. When Timothy said this, he threw the pen in his hand onto the table in frustration, thinking about how Melissa was worried about him this morning. Timothy felt even guiltier. He should not lie to her. He needed to confess all of this to her and beg for forgiveness. Oh, as long as it doesn't get out. When Leslie heard Timothy say this, he immediately let out a sigh of relief, glad to have not been caught in a lie. After that, Leslie looked over at him and asked, I heard from Derek that you left with a woman. And then? What happened to you two? What did that woman look like? Is she pretty? Timothy's face held an annoyed expression. He did not say anything in response and chose to ignore Leslie. No way. Could it be? You are a good husband who has never strayed. Are you going to lose that reputation? Although Leslie knew what happened, it was not often that he had the opportunity to tease Timothy. How could he let it go so easily? Is there anything else? If there is nothing else, you should head on out. He didn't even look at Leslie as he ordered him to leave. Tim, don't be like this. I just wanted to ask you about it. How do you feel? Leslie didn't care about Timothy's remorseful expression one bit. Get lost. He coldly spat out the words, sending Leslie a warning with a look. If he didn't leave on his own, he'd be calling security, he informed Leslie with his eyes. Leslie only knows how to be lazy all day. He doesn't do proper work and doesn't carry himself like a businessman, Timothy thought. Okay. I'll leave you alone about it. Won't ask anymore. Leslie quickly raised both of his hands in surrender. He coughed lightly and tried to hold back his laughter. He said to Timothy, Timothy, this is over just like that. I won't bring it up again in the future. I also told Derek and the others that they should keep the matter of you spending the night with a woman a secret. Even I don't know who that woman is, so if Melissa finds out, as long as you don't say anything, she will never know. Melissa trusts me so much. I don't think she will investigate this. On the other hand, I do feel that I should be honest with her. Timothy took a deep breath. No way, Tim, please don't do that. Leslie cried out in surprise. Don't be honest with her. Otherwise, the good days will come to an end. That's absolutely the worst idea.